Last week we did this. And why did it take us so long to do that? Well, it was the fear of the unknown. While we found a lot of videos about come along with us as we camp on a national seashore like the Cape Lookout National Seashore, and we found a lot of videos for driving in the sand and the beach, we didn't find a lot of videos that tell you what you need to do to prepare and how to make the reservations and what you need to bring and on and on and on. So we're going to share those things with you today. So if you go, you'll be prepared. Hi, I'm Owen of Van Trekking Lifestyle. Let's get started. Well, it may seem obvious, but the most important thing you're going to need is a 4x4 vehicle with high clearance. You might be able to make it with an all-wheel drive or a front-wheel drive, but you have less chances of getting unstuck if you get stuck. You're going to need some type of off-road tires on that vehicle so that you can get good traction in the sand. You're also going to need some type of recovery pads in case you get stuck. For us, they're Max Tracks that we keep on top of our van. You're going to need some kind of strap that you can use to get pulled out in case you get really stuck. For us, we use a kinetic tow rope, what the locals there call a snatch rope. And last but not least, don't think about going over to the island full of sand without some type of shovel. And the longer the handle of the shovel that you can take, the better off you're going to be. Those are the things that I wouldn't go on the island without having with me. But there are a few other things that will make your trip over there safer and nicer, like something to help you to air down your tires, like a compressor in case you need to add air to your tires once you're on the island. We were really surprised when we got to the island that we had 3 bars of LTE from both Verizon and T-Mobile, but it might make sense to take a communication device like a Garmin InReach or our Zoleo that we have. Would you believe me if I told you it gets really dark out on that island at night? Guess what you're probably going to want to have with you? A flashlight, maybe even a headlamp, and maybe some kind of solar light that you can put up in your campsite so that you don't bump into things. And one of the things we forgot to take, but we wish we had, was a trasheroo. And unless you go in the dead of winter, bugs are always going to be an issue when you're near the coast. So take lots of bug spray, and if you have it, a thermocell. And when you get there, there's an unlimited amount of sand and beautiful views. But what they don't have? Shade. So make sure you take lots and lots of sunscreen and hat and face covering. If you've gathered up all your supplies and all your courage, then it's time for you to make your reservations. Well, the good thing is there are very few reservations you need to make. In fact, you don't need one to camp on the island, but you do need to go to recreation.gov and purchase an ORV, off-road vehicle permit. It'll be $25. You'll also need to print that out and take it with you. You're going to need to call a ferry service to make a reservation too. Before you do that though, you need to do some planning. You need to know the date and time you're going to go onto the island and the date and time you're going to come off, which means you need to know the duration of the time you're going to spend there. Well, that's a tricky thing. You'd really like to stay for 10 or 12 or 14 days, but it is completely dry camping, so be careful what you choose that first time. Lynn and I would suggest maybe 3 to 4 nights that very first time you go onto the island. And you may want to skip Thursdays and Fridays to go to the island and Sundays to come off. And speaking of times for the ferry, make sure you book your ferry trip so that you arrive at low tide. If you're still going to make this trip, then the day's going to come when you're going to arrive at the ferry. They're going to tell you to try to arrive 45 minutes to an hour in advance. And we would say at least arrive an hour before you're supposed to leave. Park your van or your vehicle that you're traveling in, go inside and pay the nice people at the office. Make sure that you're on the ferry that you think you're supposed to be on and get instructions for when you're going to be boarding the ferry. And while you're in there, take the time to talk to the people in the office because they have local knowledge, and that local knowledge will help you a lot. And they have an awesome store there. If you forgot anything, wood, ice, sunscreen, fishing supplies, fishing bait, anything that you might think that you would need on the island, they've had someone come in and say, hey, do you have this? Or do you have this? At least once or twice. And they're pretty smart. They stock it there so you can grab what you need before you go over to the island. Now, it may cost you a little bit more than it would at a Walmart, But supporting local businesses like that will only help them to stay in business. And you can't swim over to this island with your rig, so we need them to be there, and we like supporting them. So if you arrived an hour early, probably now you have about 45 minutes left. Go outside and air down your tires. But before you do that, find one of the captains or one of the crew members and have them look at your rig and ask them for a suggestion as to what PSI you should air down to. Even if you're experienced, do that, because the conditions on the island changes almost, every month or every storm that blows in, the conditions are going to change. For us, we thought we were going to air down to 20 PSI. But when the captain walked around, he said, that's a really nice Mercedes rig, but I wouldn't go on there without it being any higher than 18. We dropped all 4 tires down to 18. You may be tempted to wait until you get to the island to air down your tires. And if you're running really, really late, then maybe you should try to do that on the ferry. But trust me, some of the worst sand you're going to go on for the entire trip are those first 10 to 20 yards after you get off of the ferry. So make sure those tires are aired down before you get onto the ferry, or at least by the time you get off, and make sure you're in 4-wheel drive. And for us, it was 4-wheel drive low before we got off the ferry. When it comes your time to get off, follow the instructions again and go off, and keep a steady speed as you go, because that first little bit of sand is going to be a little squirrely. Make sure you're ready for that, but keep going. Don't goose it and gas it and try to spin through. Just keep a steady and slow pace, and pretty soon you're going to be off and you're going to be going, wow, that was nothing. In the case of Cape Lookout National Seashore, you're going to need to stop at the office. If you haven't already obtained your little sticker, stop there and show them your printout of your permit, and they'll give you your sticker. After you get your permit, the real stuff starts. You're going to make your way to the ramp, and you're going to start driving on the beach. Now, this ramp is probably going to be one of the most scary things you're going to do. It's going to be the deepest sand. It's going to be a place where there aren't as many defined ruts for you to follow. So make sure you're in 4-wheel drive. If it's your first time, make sure you're in 4-wheel drive low. Make sure the traction control and all those things are turned off on your vehicle, and then just get a steady pace and go through. Once you turn left or you turn right, you're going to be doing what you came to the island to do. You're going to have that view of the ocean for the first time and all the dunes and sand around you. And you're going to be tempted to just do this and look, but keep your hands on the wheel and pay attention, because things happen really, really quickly, and you need to get a feel for how your vehicle handles in that sand, especially if this is your first time. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that teach you how to drive in the sand, so I will not even begin to claim that I'm an expert at that, and I hope you'll go watch as many of them as you can. But here are a few short tips. You know that old saying, you get stuck in a rut? Well, when you're on the beach, the ruts are your friends. You're usually going to see maybe 2 or at the most maybe 3 defined ruts or paths through the sand. One's going to be really close to the water, one's going to be close to the dunes, and there's one in the middle. At low tide, the one closest to the water probably is going to be the one that has the most traction. But if you're in that one and you see water spewing up, you need to head back out. The one closest to the dune is going to be the one furthest away from the water, and that's going to be the one that probably you're going to be afraid of the water, you're going to go up there. But I would tell you too that that's the one that has the deepest ruts and the softest sand and the most likelihood of getting stuck. So the one to choose usually, if this is your first time, right down the middle. So put your tires right in the ruts and keep a steady speed. Don't go too fast, don't go too slow. Just keep a steady speed and you should be fine. In fact, it should be a lot like the little kid at the fairground ride where, you got the little car and it bounces off of one thing and he thinks he's steering, but he really can't go much further. That's really how those ruts treat your vehicle. So now you're driving on the beach and you're just having a good time and you're looking around and things are beautiful and everything's great. But all of a sudden it feels like you're not making any forward progress. Well, guess what? You're about to get stuck. So when you get that feeling, we would suggest stop. Don't stop by stepping on the brakes like you normally would if a deer runs out in front of you. Just let off the accelerator and you'll come to a stop pretty quickly. Now, the first thing to try without getting out of your vehicle is to put it in reverse and try to back over the sand that you've just compacted. And a lot of times that's going to work. You can pull forward. If you feel you're not making it again, back up again, and eventually you're going to be able to make it out of that. But if you find that that doesn't work, then you're going to have to do one or maybe all of the following. The first thing to do is to get out and to air down your tires at least another 2 or 3 PSI and try everything again. Usually that will work. While we were on the island, Lynn and I saw 3 trucks get stuck, and each time they got out, aired down a little bit further than they thought they needed to, and off they went. So if you get stuck, that's the first thing to try. And if that doesn't work, you're on to option 3. Option 3 is get out and get your shovel. You brought your shovel, didn't you? I hope so, because you're gonna need it right now. Get out and dig a trench in front of the tires, both the front and the back, and look underneath the vehicle. If it's scraping on the sand, then crawl up underneath there and dig away the sand so that you've got a free area to drive in, and then get back in and try to get out. So if option 1, 2, and 3 didn't work, you're on to option 4. Option 4 is your max tracks. You brought them, didn't you? I sure hope so, because if you didn't, you're starting to resemble a $5 hooker right about now. Get the max tracks out, put them down in front of your tires, and then try to roll up on them. Get enough speed to make it to some hard pan, and you should be okay. If that doesn't work, then you're on to option 5, and that is grab your kinetic rope that you brought with you and attach it to the front or the back of your vehicle, and then start waiting to flag down someone that comes around and ask for help. Most guys are going to want to really jump in and help if you're out there on that island, and you're going to see that everyone's really one big family that all conquering the same thing. So someone's going to try to come up and help you probably. If none of those options work, then your last resort is to call a tow service. They'll ride the ferry over, and they'll either help you get out or they'll tow you back to the mainland. Either way it goes, it's going to be expensive. So make sure you try all the options ahead of that before you resort to that last option. So you've been driving down the beach and you've been enjoying the scenery. Everything's beautiful, and hopefully it's been worth the time that you put in to prepare and come over here. But pretty soon it's going to be time to find that perfect campsite. Now, what makes a perfect campsite for you is not the same as what makes a perfect campsite for Lynn and I. But since you're on an island that has very few choices other than being on the beach, here's what we would suggest. Find some place that's secluded. Find a place that's level. Find a place that's close to the dunes, but not too close. The closer you get to the dunes, the more likely you are to get stuck. And if you park in the dunes, not only are you likely to get stuck, you're probably going to get a fine when you do, because you can't be on the dunes. And for us, we like to have an unobstructed view of the ocean, because that's why we came here. So you found that perfect campsite, and you're going to need to now figure out which way you want to park. The natural tendency is to park with that door so it opens up and you're looking right out at the ocean. But I would suggest that the best way is to figure out which way the wind is blowing most of the time and park with the back of the RV so that it blocks the most of that wind. We parked so that the back of the van blocked the wind, and then we were able to build a fire. We were able to cook a lot easier. It was more comfortable sitting outside, and it gave us a better shade opportunity because the wind was being blocked by the van. We could put the awning out. So now all that's left to do is just sit back and enjoy the days that you planned at this secluded, beautiful place. And hopefully you're going to enjoy every minute of it, because when we were there, we found ourselves dropping to a DEFCON level of relaxation that I don't know that we'd been in for a very long time. Well, we were really afraid to go out on the beach for the first time, and maybe you were too. Hopefully this video has helped you to reach a point of comfort that you can plan a trip. And if you do, come back later and leave us a comment and let us know how you enjoyed your trip. And until then, maybe we'll see you somewhere out on the road, or maybe even on a sandy beach. Thanks for being part of our journey. See you down the road.